Hello folks, this is Sula speaking. You are watching a video for Rogue Legacy 2, and this is based on the Ranger Legacy playthrough that I did. This is written about on my website, and I will put a link to this under the description of this video. But the basic idea is I try to play through the game with each of the individual classes only playing characters of that particular class, and this is the Ranger class. This is taken from New Game++ difficulty. I try to play through the game 3 times overall. You can keep playing through the game endlessly if you want, but 3 times is enough for me. And as I said, this is going to be a series of different boss fights from towards the end of New Game++ difficulty. So this is a fight against Estuary Enoch. He's kind of the mage version of the boss, or a mage boss, spellcaster. Looks like a black mage on his character design. And what you're seeing here is me making use of some of the Ranger's innate abilities. Ranger is a ranged attacker, actually has very good damage output, has excellent strength scaling, highest in the game after the Barbarian in terms of just raw strength scaling. The downside, and you of course get to attack from a distance with the bow. The downside is well, unfortunately, I get hit there by one of the little ghosties that Estuary Enoch summons. The big downside is that you are not very good in close combat, and you also have a fairly slow rate of fire. The bow does not attack particularly fast in comparison to some of the other weapons in this game. So I'm doing my best to dodge all this stuff. I'm actually making some pretty sloppy mistakes here. Wouldn't say that this was one of my better Estuary Enoch fights. I mean, like, not terrible by any means, but certainly could have been better than that. The first half of the fight was quite good, and then a little sloppy on the second half of the fight. So Estuary Enoch's dead, right? Well, no. Those of you who have played this game probably familiar. This is a 2-part boss fight, and he turns into a mimic chest after you have killed the mage version of the boss. And there's some interesting plot-related backstory for this if you play up to some of the higher difficulties and read all of the hidden journals. So this mimic version of the boss has kind of 3 things that it'll do. It bounces around, and it will do a charge attack that leaves coins on the ground, and then it will stand in place and shoot out exploding red potions. And those are the 3 things. It just does those same 3 attacks over and over again. So it's not that difficult. It certainly is a matchup that's better for the Ranger class. As you see me take probably the single dumbest hit of any of these bosses you're going to see in this video. Just bouncing chest coming into the corner, and I don't seem to be able to get out of the way. So it is a repetitive boss, but easier for the Ranger who has this distance attack as opposed to someone who needs to get close. The most challenging thing is this charge attack, and normally for most characters you have to kind of bounce on the head of the chest, but fortunately the Ranger doesn't have to do that. The Ranger has its talent where it can create what's called the Ivy Canopy, puts a little platform up on the air, and you can just use that to avoid taking damage in that phase. The Ivy Canopy is one of the best aspects of this class, and it's not something that you would typically use because it's a bit of a weird talent. Puts a platform on the anywhere that you want, lasts for 8 seconds, then goes on a cooldown for another 7 seconds. But when you just play one class over and over again, you get a better sense of like what its strengths are, and I get the chance to use this. Okay, so we're going to jump ahead to the next boss fight. And that was a cut there. I went and did more of the dungeon, but now we're going to cut forward here. If you're paying really close attention, you'll see that the max HP actually went up because I was able to take a Blessing of Life in between that. And now we're going to do the boss of Axis Mundi, which is the Void Beast. And this is not the normal Void Beast. This is the Prime Refight version that you can only get by increasing the difficulty level. You have to be at least New Game +2 in order to see this refight of the boss, and it's significantly more difficult than the normal version of the fight. So you end up having to fight not only both of these bosses in a different environment here on this ship, but you also, well, as you damage the 2 main bosses, they will spawn little skeleton minions that will make the fight more difficult. The hardest thing about this fight are the little minions that spawn. And then also the ghosts that come out whenever they jump up in the air. They will chase after you. They're like the cursed projectiles. And yeah, the fact that they will chase you anywhere on the map makes them more difficult. The Ranger class does not deal especially well with the Cursed Ghost. By the way, there's one of the skeleton minions. They will summon these as they get lower. But as I was saying, the Ranger class does not deal very well with cursed projectiles. It's just because the bow has kind of a narrow hitbox when you actually fire the arrows, it's not the easiest thing to pop those projectiles. And you can only hit one of them at a time. It's not like you can swing the sword and hit like 3 things at once. Typically, the arrows can only hit 1 thing at a time. So it's not the best at dealing with these things. One thing I could be doing is I could be using the platform. Yep, you see me actually using the platform there to dodge some of the damage. But you can see I'm struggling here, and that this is difficult once these additional enemies get on screen. So I'm going to wipe one of the minions right there. And it's important that I try to limit how many minions are on screen at once. I can also use the Ivy Canopy to deal with some of these enemies. And I just keep getting caught in situations where there's no easy escape. So it looks like I'm, about to die here because I've been taking all this damage. There are 2 meat drops in the lanterns on the edges of this chamber. Those are always there, so you can take advantage of them. And finally, I'm able to get into a decent firing position here. I'm able to take out the first one of these bosses. So the good news is the fight gets a lot easier after this point. So when the first main Void Beast dies, it's going to go ahead and spawn some additional little skeleton minions. But the fact that there's only one of the main Void Beasts now definitely makes the fight easier. When I played this fight with my previous Legacy series, I was playing the Mage class before this. I had the same observation in this fight, that it got a lot easier once one of the 2 main Void Beasts were gone. So now I'm trying to take out the minions before I continue damaging the second one of the Void Beasts, because when I damage that enemy, he's going to start spawning more of the skeleton minions. So I'm trying to limit how many of them are on the screen at once. It is possible to get into a situation where there's like 7 or 8 of them on the screen, and you really don't want to be fighting that many opponents at the same time. So once again, damage the enemies one at a time. Try to limit how many foes you're fighting at once, and that keeps this to a more reasonable setup. So you can use the spin kicks to deal with these. I actually misfired an arrow there, got hit by another one. So I mean, I'm getting very low, but the good news is the battle is getting easier over time. I also mentioned the Ivy Canopy can be used to pop those projectiles. Can also be used to pop the bones that they shoot out. Everything except the giant bone that goes slowly across the area. So now it's down to just 1v1, and this is a much easier fight once it gets down to 1v1. A lot easier when there's like 5 or 6 people on the screen. All right, so we'll just continue dodging the cannonballs, but now I can stay at a distance, knock out this guy, and when he dies, he's going to spawn 3 more minions, and it should be relatively straightforward from there. I'll use this moment to talk briefly about the relics that I picked up for this run. The little glowing green face in the bottom left-hand corner of the interface is the first relic I picked up. It was called Freon's Reward, and it gave me some health back every time that I opened a treasure chest. Gives back health equal to your intelligence stat. Now, I don't have a lot of intelligence with this character because Rangers use the strength stat, not the intelligence stat, so you don't really want to stack intelligence. But I was getting, I think, 26, 27 HP every time I opened a treasure chest. And over the course of time, that actually does matter. So that does not do anything in a boss fight, but the other relic does. The other relic is the Incandescent Telescope. And that causes you to deal additional damage to enemies that are not right next to you. There's actually a little circle that surrounds my character. It's a little hard to see. It's like a little white circle. And any monsters I damage outside that circle take 12% increased damage. This is a good relic for the Ranger class because usually you're shooting at people that are a good distance away. So I'm going to get that 12% damage bonus on most of my arrow shots. If people are right next to me, then I don't get that benefit. So after defeating the 2 Void Beasts, I am able to get this Insight, and that means I'm going to get a 5% damage bonus against the final boss. I'm also going to put another cut in the video there. Those people who have played this game might be like, wait a minute, you walked in the gate to go to the Kerguelen Plateau and you ended up in the Sun Tower? It's like, well, obviously that does not happen normally, but that was a cut in the editing, and it's actually quite nice. The transitions when you go through the teleporters actually make for nice places to put transitions in videos. So we have skipped ahead to another boss. Note that my max HP has also gone up because I was able to find another Blessing of Life in the plateau. So I've gone ahead and grabbed that. And now we're facing the boss at the top of the Sun Tower. This is Estuary Irad. And this boss, at first, when I played them with the ranger, I was like, oh man, this is such a difficult fight because you can see like there's not really a lot of places to like fire arrows. You know, like you're doing a lot of jumping back and forth. But then I was able to figure out that there is a perfect place to put up an ivy canopy right in the center of the room. If you put an ivy canopy up there, you just get like this perfect firing position. So I'm trying to set it up right now. And like if you stand right here, almost everything ends up missing your character. All of the blue shots, like the blue fireballs, all miss, and the ivy canopy will pop the little cursed ghosties that they fire out. That's actually the only thing it will pop. It does not pop the blue fireballs. It doesn't pop the big orange fireballs that you have to spin kick to pop. These ones right here, I guess maybe they're more yellow. So it doesn't pop those, and it also doesn't stop the big purple void projectiles that get shot out. But you still get a great place to stand and fire. So I'm not doing a great job in this fight. I would say I'm doing okay. And like there, I stick around too long. I fire one extra shot. But as soon as the ivy canopy is off cooldown, I can put this up. I just have to make sure to pop the yellow projectiles there, and then I can just shoot away. So basically the pattern is put this up and use it to attack, and when it's on cooldown, just dodge. Like maybe get in one shot here and there, but there's just not time to get off a lot of shots. Like once again, put this in. Note that all the blue fireballs miss me. It's just like a perfect spot, and I have to believe the developers intended that to put that in there. So like once again, the little cursed ghosties get popped by the ivy canopy, and then one more shot, and we finish this off. So even though that was a bit of a sloppy fight, I still win very comfortably. Before I realized that you could use the ivy canopy like that, this was a monster of a boss fight for the ranger class, because you can imagine if you're just trying to like jump and dodge and so on, it's not the easiest. Whenever you fire the bow in midair, there's also a slight amount of knockback. You kind of move back very slightly when you fire the bow in the air, which like 90% of the time doesn't matter, but in a situation like that where there's projectiles flying around everywhere, you can very easily knock yourself into the shots of the monsters. So fortunately, ivy canopy for the win there. All right, well, we are going to cut ahead yet again, and we're going to cut ahead to the last boss before going through the golden doors. This is estuary tubal. Note that my health has gone up again. Thank you, blessings of life. There are actually 2 blessings of life in the plateau, and I was able to get the increased HP on both of them. I started out right around 1,000 HP with this character, and I ended up at 1,900, almost 2,000. So yes, it does pay to explore the dungeon. And I did get a full dungeon clear with this character and got almost 600,000 gold from it. All right, so this is estuary tubal. His big thing is he likes to summon little flying automatons to help him throughout the fight. They are invincible when they first appear on the map, but that invincibility timer lasts about 7 or so seconds. And then once it times out, they die in one hit to anything. So what I was doing there was I waited for the minions to have their invulnerability timer run out, and then I tossed a fireball, and then that burn effect was guaranteed to kill them as soon as it ran out. So the beginning of this fight has gone beautifully. I actually managed to get him down to almost half health without even taking a hit. So when he goes down to 1/3 HP, or when he goes down to 2/3 HP, when you've taken 1/3 of his HP off, he summons this bouncing spiked ball, which is super annoying and just makes the rest of the fight a little bit more chaotic. So like right there, I was not able to dodge. He summoned a bunch of swords that rained down from the ceiling, and then I accidentally put a platform down there. I did not intend to put a platform on the ceiling there. And this is actually going to end up costing me because now the ivy canopy is on cooldown. See, I tried to put one up there, but the skill was already on cooldown. He is most dangerous right after he summons his additional minions. He's going to pause again when he hits 1/3 on his health bar, so gotten him down to 1/3 HP. By the way, that's also a terrible hit. He's not even doing anything, and I still take a hit there. And he summons these spiked wheels on like the sides of the arena, so it just shrinks the size of the arena. But the dangerous part's going to be when he summons more minions again, and that's always when Tubal's at his most dangerous. This time he summoned flying daggers, which are going to come towards me, and again, just limit the amount of space that I have to work with here. So their invulnerability has just timed out now, so I'd like to get them off the board. It's almost always worthwhile to, and by the way, I'm taking more damage here. It's almost always worthwhile to kill the minions to like take the extra seconds to get rid of them, just because they cause so many problems. So I am getting quite low here, but the good news is Tubal's also getting low. We can put up the ivy canopy again. It's perfect whenever he puts that burning stuff on the floor, and it's actually going to block the cursed ghosties right there. And so now I'm going to just finish him off. And that was a close fight. I'm really glad I was able to run my health out up to 1900. That's why it's really worthwhile to go through the whole dungeon, try to increase your health, because if I had still had the 1000 HP that I had at the start, obviously that would have resulted in a defeat instead of a victory. And so we're going to claim the various rewards and get set to head off through the golden doors to the last two bosses. So next up will be Jonah, and Jonah is the traitor. He's very similar to Johannes from the original Rogue Legacy, which I have to imagine was deliberate. He has a series of different weapon attacks. By the way, the screen was like scrolling in kind of a weird way. He has a series of different weapon attacks, and if you can recognize them, he's generally not too bad. I am also taking full advantage of the fact that I get 80% of my health and mana back on entering the boss stores. That is an upgrade that you buy in this game. You start out getting no health back when you go through a boss store, and there are 5 upgrades, and each increases it by 20%. I have 4 of the 5, so I get 80% of HP and mana back on going through the doors. So anyway, here is Jonah. And Jonah has a bunch of different weapon attacks, and believe it or not, the most dangerous one is the one you're seeing right here, the one where he summons pizzas. I'm able to stop the pizzas right there. You can break the pizzas if you spin kick them, and they will also be blocked by the Ivy Canopy. But I still consider this to be the worst of his various abilities, just because the pizzas will chase after you, and they tend to bleed over into the next ability that Jonah does. So you're kind of often dealing with 2 different attacks at once. And he was just spamming the living daylights out of the pizzas here. So like I'm trying to clear these out, but like look, I'm trying to dodge his next ability, which is the axe, which is him using his axe. And so I end up getting hit there. So that's why I think that that is his worst attack. At least it's the one I have the most trouble avoiding. And he's already done his pizza attack 3 different times. So yeah, he was just spamming the living daylights out of his pizza ability. I mean, it is hilarious that like his most dangerous attacks are pizzas, and probably spoons are the most dangerous other one. And like yet again, another pizza here. So like once again, I'm trying to dodge his next attack. But fortunately, that time I am able to avoid it. I actually think I did a reasonably good job at avoiding it. It's just he really, really, really wanted to summon those pizzas here, as you see me dodging his katana attack. And now spoons again. So yeah, we get the idea. So I mistimed the dodge there, but hopefully by now you've seen all of his various abilities. And yep, more pizzas. Really, really wants to do that. And like there, I'm trying to break the pizza, and I flub the attack. So we use the Ivy Canopy for protection again. Again, this is a super, super valuable talent. It just takes some practice to use. If you're just playing the game normally and like you're running through all the different classes and you happen to roll the Ranger, you're probably not going to get much use out of the Ivy Canopy, because it's like not the most intuitive skill to use. It is not like, I don't know, the Paladin Shield, where, you know, you just shield when you're about to take damage, or something like the Barbarian Shout, you know, you hit the button and all the projectiles on the screen disappear. More intuitive abilities. The Ivy Canopy is not like that. It's a weird ability to use. You kind of have to like see the projectiles ahead of time, predict where they're going to go, and then put a platform down. But with some practice, it is a very good ability. It's one of the game's better defensive abilities, I'd say. And that was what surprised me the most when I was playing the class. Just how useful the Ivy Canopy was. Really caught me off guard, because as I said, if you don't play, you know, I've played like 14 Rangers in a row. Unless you're doing that, it's just hard to get experience with that. So you were seeing the other thing about Jonah. Jonah has a lot of health, so it takes a long time to kill him. As I said, he's not that difficult, because most of his abilities are pretty easy to dodge. And you can see once he stopped doing his pizza attack nonstop, I actually managed to avoid most of his abilities. But it just takes a while to cut through his health bar, because he has an awful lot of health. And then he dies from an arrow to the knee. I mean, that's just his normal death animation, but it really looks like he took an arrow to the knee. And so that's going to be it for Jonah. I was not particularly concerned about this fight. The only thing I had to worry about was make sure that my health doesn't go down to like 100, because then I would not get back up to full for the last boss, which is Kane. But I think I just had to be over like 400-ish health, and then I would get back to full. And I did that pretty easily. I did not consider that to be an especially well-played Jonah fight, and you know, it still was not particularly close. I was able to handle that with no real problems. All right, so now we head back to the castle, back to the Castle Hampson, and we are up against the final boss, that being Kane. So I was not expecting to make it this far with this character. I honestly thought it would take another Ranger or two after this one in order to be able to complete the game, but Yeah, I actually managed to make it through all these bosses, and so now all I have to do is deal with Kane, and that will be enough to wrap this game up. Kane is very similar to the Fountain from the original Rogue Legacy, so just as the original game had Johannes and the Fountain, this game has Jonah and Kane. There's a little bit more lore and a little bit more backstory in this one, tying into a lot of biblical imagery, interestingly enough. But in any case, so Kane has a whole bunch of different abilities. I believe he has 6 different abilities that he can use kind of during the first half of the fight, and then another 6 abilities he can use after that. So, I don't know if there's formal names for these, but I tend to think of them as he has like 6 light attacks and then 6 dark attacks, and you'll see what I mean as this fight goes along if you haven't seen this before, because like all of these, he kind of like flashes a little bit with like a little white coloring before he uses these, and then he flashes with like a dark coloring for his second set of abilities. So you can see a lot of these different ones. If you can see which attack he's going to do ahead of time, you can usually perform the appropriate dodge countermeasure. So it's really all about just knowing what he's going to do. When he gets to 3/4 health and then again at half health, he shoots out a bunch of these blue fireballs that move very quickly. So this is another place where the Ivy Canopy is awesome. Put that Ivy Canopy down, and it'll block all of those fireballs if you stand underneath it. Really, really nice. Also, love the airborne fireballs. Or not airborne fireballs, airborne arrows. So this is his most dangerous ability, is when he shoots out that little projectile that has like a void spiked ball encased in a Nama, one of Nama's projectiles from Estuary Nama. I just don't have a good answer for how to deal with that. It's a little bit like the pizzas that get shot out by Jonah, in the sense that like the like Nama projectile he shoots out tends to take long enough to pop that like his next ability is already hitting while I'm still dealing with it. By the way, Ivy Canopy OP yet again blocks all of the shots there. So now he's alternating both sets of attacks, kind of his light attacks and his dark attacks. And some of them look very similar, so it's just you kind of have to recognize which attack is coming. And if you know what he's going to do, you can usually dodge it. So this is really an encounter where practice makes perfect. Like this is the one where he puts flames on the floor and you have to like spin kick off of the other projectiles. There it is against, like once again, I just find this to be the most difficult one to avoid. So like I dodge the first attack, but then it bleeds over into his next attack and I get hit by the next one. So that's why I've said I just consider that to be the hardest. He hits me a disproportionately high amount of the time on that Nama projectile. I don't know what the proper name for that attack is called, if it has one. But overall, this fight's going really well. I've gotten so much better at this fight over time because it really is just pattern recognition. I mean, I'll make a dumb mistake like that right there occasionally. And like once again, I'm going to take another hit from that one attack that I've repeatedly said is the most dangerous. But this fight's going really well. Like I know I don't have to move to dodge this one because those are going to be projectiles that go off in other directions. And so, yeah, like once you know what he's going to do, it's actually not that hard of a fight. I consider Tubal and Irad to be more difficult fights than this one now. And boom, we're going to finish it off with a headshot right there, as he was doing his most dangerous attack yet again. If he stays away from that one with like the Void Ball plus Nama projectile, he honestly doesn't hit me very often, except when he does that one, because I just have trouble clearing both projectiles. But that's that. It wasn't particularly close. I mean, he didn't even get through half of my health bar. So I will take it, and that's going to be a win and polish up this difficulty. So while the ending sequence plays here, I'm going to let this run so that folks can see the endgame screen where I have the billion monsters killed. Just some closing thoughts kind of on the Ranger as a class. This is one of my favorite classes in the game. I don't think it's the strongest in the game. I think I would rate it as average to slightly above average. I'll have to spend more time with some of the other classes before putting together like a true tier list, but I think it's, you know, as I said, better than average. Maybe average to slightly above average, but certainly not one of the game's weakest classes, while also not being one of the game's strongest classes. My personal opinion is the Duelist is the game's strongest class, and the Knight is close behind that. It's not in that tier, but it's still a very good class in its own right. It does have a bit of a high skill cap because of the need to aim the shots, and you do have to get very good at using the Ivy Canopy, which is, as I said, kind of an unintuitive skill to use. But if you can master that, it is pretty solid in its own right, and you know, the ranged ability is great. It just stinks when you're in very close, tight quarters and monsters are right on top of you, and you've got this dinky bow. That's where you really struggle. Overall, though, this was a fun class to play, and that's kind of the other thing I have to say about this one is it is a really fun class to play. It's just awesome to be sniping people from a distance, hitting people with range shots. It is one of the most entertaining classes to play, and I would highly encourage people to check this one out if they're playing Rogue Legacy 2. Do a dedicated build just for Rangers and see how it goes because it's definitely a little bit of a different gameplay style than if you're playing melee classes like I don't know, the barbarian or whatever. But it's a lot of fun, and aiming and shooting people down with arrows really never gets old. So I would definitely encourage giving this one a try. All right, let's go ahead and look at the end game stat screen here. So I did end up getting about 600,000 gold, which is extremely high for New Game +2, NG+2 difficulty. Very, very good stuff there. And, you're not seeing how long it took to get through all of this, but it took about 3.5 hours to do this. It takes forever to clear the dungeon. I did have it increased to maximum size with the burden of scale and a bunch of other additional burdens that I turned on. So, yeah, I killed, 700 something monsters? 751 monsters to get through the whole thing. Oh boy. Well, that was quite a journey. In any case, though, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Until next time, hope you guys are having a great week. Until then, take care, folks.